think this one was worth it. I liked it at the end. Didn't like it at the beginning, but I liked it at the end. I did. Awesome job. I like to be challenged. Way to go. Thank you. Okay, so I was driving this week. We had a clergy conference in Schuyler, Nebraska. Does anybody know where Schuyler, Nebraska is? Yeah. So Schuyler, Nebraska is west of here, right? And so I'm driving, and I leave from my house. I live at 156 and Blondo or Maple, and so I leave from my house, and I'm driving along, and pretty soon I'm in Gretna. Now, if you've ever driven to Schuyler from here, you know that I was lost, right? I'm not lost, but it was like I only knew one way to go. I was going to I-80, and I was going to somehow thought I would get to Gretna. It was a stunner to me when I finally looked up and I went, hey, this isn't the road to Gretna. And I had to stop and I think, or to Schuyler. I had to stop and think. So luckily, I had my friend Siri with me, and so I had my phone. I was alone in the car, but I had my phone. And so I pull over, of course, wink, and I say, put in Schuyler, Nebraska. Show me how to get there. And maps, comes on. Now the great thing is she talks to you as you drive, right? So anyway, I thought, well, if I just keep going on this road to I-80, eventually there'll be a place where I can take a right and I won't lose all the time that I've already spent, right? And so Siri's telling me, now, do you ever drive to Gretna, anybody? There's a big metal kind of building along the way there. If you leave Gretna, you're on your way to the interstate, and there's like this metal row of buildings and like a tack place and all that. And so she tells me to take a right on that road. I think it's R&R Road or something. And I look over at it and, it's not, that road isn't going anywhere. That road just actually is going in a circle. And so I think, well, she's wrong. I'm not listening to that. I keep going. And so now she's getting mad. She's like, rerouting, And so another, and I keep thinking, I'll take a right, I'll take a right. Well, every time she tells me to take a right, I look down and I think, that's not the road. I can't get there from here. Okay. So then I get to the road to Ashland. What's that? Highway 36? Highway 6. Just before you hit the interstate. I think, well, I know what to do. I'll take a right here. And certainly, I know that Schuyler's west, right? And I know I'm heading west, so clearly there'll be a road to get there. Okay, so now Siri keeps rerouting. Now every time, and she says take a right on Flug Road. And I look down Flug Road, and it's just a little old dirt road. And I think that's not it. It's going to cost me more time. Next one, rerouting, 285th Street. Take a right. Okay, now I'm in Ashland. Okay, right? I have gone how far out of my way? A half an hour? At least 45 minutes, or half an hour. Okay, finally I give in, right? And I pull over and I say, okay. And so what I do, I have to turn around, finally, come all the way back here, and then go the right way to Schuyler, right? Cost me 40. My point is, nobody wants to listen to somebody else, do they? Not a computer, not a phone, not a priest, right? Nobody wants to take it, not a voice from heaven. Nobody wants to take advice on how to get someplace. We think we know better. I certainly think I know better. But we have to listen to somebody. Truly, if we're going to get anywhere in life, we got to listen to somebody. Somebody who knows more than we know, somebody who's been there before. The great thing about Siri is they've mapped it all out. They've driven these roads with little cameras and stuff. They know more than we, and sooner or later, you have to follow. We were at this retreat, and the bishop said something that I'd never heard before, and I know to be true now thinking about. Of course, the bishop said it, so it has to be true. But anyway, but if you did the research, I think you'd find that the bishop, in fact, was speaking truth. The bishop told us, and I want you to remember this because I think it's important. He said, Jesus never once said, worship me. In all of Scripture, Jesus never said, worship me. He did say, follow me. That's what he said. Not worship me. Follow. Now, how much of our time do we spend worshiping him? And how much of our time do we spend following him? Right? Like you had a whole week before you got here. What road were you on that week? How was that going for you? Were you listening to the right voices? Were you happy with the road? Were you on the road of discipleship is the question. And then you get here, and this is our glory time, right? We're up on the mountain, our faces are shining, this is awesome. Great. Then we're going to leave here. And we're going to go for another week. What road will you get on as soon as you leave here? How will you feel about it? Who are you following is the question. Okay, today we're following the footsteps of the church, and we're at a crossroads, right? We are at the place between Advent, Christmas, and Epiphany. Today's the last Sunday of Epiphany. This week starts, Lent, right? So, Advent, Christmas, Epiphany. Today is last Epiphany when we get this story of Transfiguration. It's a marker, you guys. It's a marker because we're in the middle. And next we go to Lent, Easter, Pentecost. And then this long season between, okay? So, we're right in the middle. We're at a crossroads, and the church is telling us, here's the way. But I think it's an odd marker to put here at the junction of Epiphany and Lent, right? I think it's an odd text to get. What a curious, it's kind of saying, glorious days are ahead. And what it ought to say is caution, rough roads coming. That's what it ought to say. Because what happens? What happens? This is a great story, this Transfiguration story. You have to know the Old Testament, though, to get it, to really get it. And we read the Old Testament part today. We read this idea about Moses. Where does Moses go? Up on the mountain. Where, okay, what's great about mountains? God lives on a mountain. Not literally. What I'm saying to you is, in the Bible, when you get to a mountain, that's important, right? Because on the mountain, that's where you're going to find God. What else will you find? Clouds. We get them in both stories. We get the voice of God or the presence of God. We also get this fantastic changing of the face. Moses' face got so transfigured, so glowing white, that they couldn't stand to look at him, and he had to put a veil on when he came down to talk to the people. And then when he went back up to talk to God, he took the veil off. Then he went back to talk to people, veil on. See? It was so bright, you couldn't even see it. Dylan? So bright, you couldn't even look at it. You have to be like, ah! Same with Jesus. Jesus goes to the mountain. What happens? All these elements. You're supposed to hear the echo of Moses in this story about Jesus. Goes to the mountain, cloud, voice, transfiguration. Who's on the mountain with him? Elijah and Moses. Right, we're getting the whole story here. And of course the disciples kind of missed the boat, but anyway, that's not important. What's important is Jesus says to them, this is the glory of God on the mountain. Now, right before this, he's told them something really important that they're supposed to remember. Right before the story we got today, he tells them, I'm going to the cross. It's the first time that he tells them in Luke's gospel. The verses right before today's story, I'm going to the cross, and you're going with me. I'm going to the cross, and if you want to follow me, you have to have a cross. He tells them, suffering is the way. Suffering is the way. The road to discipleship has suffering on it. Okay, so they hear that, then they go and they forget about it because they're on the mountain. Yay, glory, right? Transfiguration, yeah. Then they take this windy path down the mountain, and where do they go? They're heading to Jerusalem. What's the first thing that they run into? This poor child, right? Sick. We would say, I don't know what the diagnosis would be today. Then it was demon, right? And so and guess what? The disciples have already forgotten about suffering. They encounter this suffering that's not their own, it's somebody else's. But they've forgotten what they're supposed to do, and they can't do anything about it, and they're mystified. And Jesus says, come on, I just told you. Right? This is what happens on the road. This is what happens if you're going to follow me. You're going to encounter suffering. Right? The brightness of God's glory illuminates the road of discipleship on which we encounter suffering. Not suffering for the sake of suffering, right? I don't want you to hear me wrong. I don't believe that suffering exists so that we can be better. I don't. I don't believe that suffering exists so that we can grow into something more beautiful so that we can stand and be in the glory of God. I don't think that. I just think that suffering is what happens to disciples. I think that suffering is the condition of the road we're on. It just is, right? And Jesus shows them the way again. Follow me. And look, if we're going to follow Jesus, there's no easier path. If there were, I would tell you. I would. There's just no way to make it easier or faster or slower or less painful. It's just not a piece of cake. This is the only road there is to follow Jesus. It's the road of discipleship, where we will see suffering and we will experience suffering. But Jesus says that if we're on the road of discipleship, following him, we will travel through suffering into glory. Right? And neither is death our final destination, because Jesus shows us that we will journey through death into resurrection, into salvation, into the very presence of the one holy and living God. That's where the road goes. Right? So I want you to think today about the road you're on. Are you on the right road? Right? Do you like the road you're on? Would you like to change roads? You could always go back like I did and go on the way to Sky. You can turn around. That option's available. Some roads are not going to lead you, though. They don't all lead to God. They don't. Are you listening to the right voices? Is the road you're on the road of discipleship? Are you okay with the price? Are you clear about the cost? Are you excited about the destination? Are you frightened? Right? Are you frightened? You know, God's glory illuminates the path, but it isn't the whole path at once. It's just like one step at a time. Just the next step. And sometimes the darkness that lies ahead can frighten us. But the good news is, you guys, we're together on it. I'm with you. You're with me. We're together, right? We're all following the same path. Jesus went before us. The disciples went before us. The church has gone before us. And the church knows the way. Faithful people everywhere and through every time have been traveling this road together, right? You see, you are not lost. And this is not a dead end. The road of discipleship leads somewhere. It leads to God.